spending time in New Orleans in the summer, you know that about every day you're going to get them thunderstorms. It's much like Florida in that respect. We got Senator Jeremy England shaking his head in the Element Well studios from the Gulf Coast. He's familiar with this.
That's right.
So that rain comes every day. About quitting time, and you're on the interstate trying to get to Metairie from downtown. It's about an hour and a half to get those 7 miles back there.
Wow.
And what made me think about that was the Cars were a popular group in that day when I was working. And I can remember sitting in one of those torrential thunderstorms right there around the cemeteries. It's 10 makes the shift there to Metairie, and the Cars blasting out on my radio there. So WTYX or IX or whatever it was, one of the local stations in New Orleans, very very popular. I think it was TIX as I recall, very popular FM station that played classic rock and so forth. It wasn't classic then. I'm calling it classic rock. Then it was current rock.
That was before my time.
But the rain would come, and it was already an hour and a half commute. But you add that rain into it, and it takes it to about 2 hours. And this is no joke now. The accidents on that stretch were so frequent, you could just count on it every day, that the New Orleans Police Department would locate in the medians of the interstate waiting for the accidents.
Wow.
Just knowing they're going to have to go, every day because people are – and we didn't have phones back then, but the cars didn't maneuver as easily as they do today. When it rained, you couldn't count on the brakes stopping you before you slid. I digress, though, but you got me thinking about it with the cars. Senator Jeremy England, of course, who represents District 51, serves as the vice chair of the Economic Development House Committee. Is that right? That don't sound right.
That's not right. No.
Where did it come from?
So I was vice chairman of Economic and Workforce Development in the Senate my first year.
Yeah.
And then we had a little bit of changeover. A couple folks got appointed to different positions.
Okay.
So now I'm vice chair of Judd B, which is a much busier committee, but I still love my service on the Economic Workforce Development.
Apologize for that.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, apologize for that. We'll get that right. So you are among the few who voted nay to House Bill 401. This is the bill that essentially dictates what I call the route to market for a motor vehicle in the state of Mississippi. It essentially prescribes the way in which motor vehicles are bought and sold in Mississippi. And I got to tell you, Senator, I'm a little confused on exactly what this bill does. I have stated that in my reading of it and in speaking to others, that what the bill would do is require that a vehicle sold in Mississippi be done so by an independently owned and operated franchise organization inside the state with a physical dealership located and licensed to do business in accordance with the licensing requirements in the state.
That's right.
So I've indicated that looked to me like that if a manufacturer wanted to sell through an outlet which it owned, a manufacturer-owned dealership located in the state, that would be prohibited. And that if a manufacturer wanted to sell directly, just bypassing any dealer, either owned by itself or a franchise of the manufacturer, that too would be prohibited. So Senator Sparks says no, the latter there that I described would still be allowed. And I'm having a hard time understanding if that's true or not.
Yeah, look, you're not the only one, Gerard. I don't know if what we passed yesterday prohibits that now.
Okay.
You know, and look, which is another
Join
reason.
the ranks of the confused.
That's right. Well, and look, it was just another reason why we needed to discuss this more.
Sure.
And I tried 3 different amendments to try to get this thing to just move on through the system and give us a couple more weeks to talk about it before sending it to the governor's desk, and I couldn't get it done. So now here we are, and yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, look, you can't go on or it's my understanding, you can't go on a Toyota website and order a car and have it come straight to your house. You may be able to go do that through a dealer.
Yeah, but is that because of state law or because of just Toyota operational policy?
Well, see, again, I'm not real sure. I think that with this law we passed yesterday, if you want to buy directly from a manufacturer, you can't do that. You've got to go through. You've got to have an independent.
Well, that's my understanding. Senator Sparks said that that's not the case. And so it's certainly true that most of these new manufacturers that are popping up into the auto industry, such as Tesla, they're disrupting the market, obviously. And there are many more who plan to introduce vehicles, mostly electric vehicles, because that appears to be the future of the vehicle industry. But we don't know what their route to market may be. Apple is busy building out, standing up their electric vehicle business unit. They may sell directly to consumers and not have a dealer network in place. If they do so, will they be granted a license to sell those vehicles in Mississippi?
Right. Right. And look, I don't want to say that Senator Sparks is wrong. He may be wrong or right.
Sure.
But it's a conversation I need to have with him. He's a very bright guy. He and I went to law school together. But my understanding of the law is that now if you like you said, if you want a vehicle in Mississippi from a manufacturer, you're gonna have to do that at a independently owned franchise here in Mississippi, or a car dealer, as we
that's what we
see up and down the interstate.
That's right, commonly know of. So I have I've read the legislation, and I'm not really sure, honestly. It appears that, as best I can tell, there's some language in here that says the applicant must furnish satisfactory evidence that he or it maintains adequate space in the building or structure wherein his or its established business is conducted for the display of new motor vehicles.
Right. Yeah. Look,
Sounds to me like you got to have a brick and mortar presence to sell a car.
Right. And a lot of that's existing language that's been there for, I think Senator Sparks said for the last 50 years, but I'm not sure if this even goes back further than that. I mean, it's a very old law, and like you say, we're moving forward, or at least the market's moving forward, and we're trying to lock in a very old way of doing business here in Mississippi.
Right. That this really calls me to think about this whole concept of why do we have franchise law? Why do we need that?
That's very
What's
good
that
question.
all about?
Look, I don't think we do. I think eventually we need to get rid of franchise law. We need to let the market deal with it.
I mean,
yeah.
So I gotta tell the audience here and you as well. I started my company in 1986. I was a franchisee. Mm-hmm. I never knew there was franchise laws. I was a franchisee for about 10 years.
Right.
Paid royalties, which is pretty typical in a franchise relationship.
Right.
And I don't remember any protections against folks who would sell the same exact products that I sold that did so back then through mail order, did so through outlets that were not franchisees, did so from the trunks of their cars.
Right. And look,
did so directly from the manufacturer. I mean, it was multiple routes to market. I didn't get any protections.
Right.
Why? Where's that?
Well, absolutely. And look, one of my amendments, it was something very odd that I did yesterday. I introduced an amendment that I voted against, but I called it the "what's good for the goose is good for the gaggle"
awesome.
Amendment, right? Instead of the gander, it's the gaggle. And basically, the amendment was: look, if you operate, if you use franchises in Mississippi, then you're required to use franchises in Mississippi. So that went for all across the spectrum of the board. Of course, we voted it down because it's just silly to do that.
Yeah.
But we're doing it here with this, this one group of dealers. We're
right.
requiring it,
right?
But we're not required anywhere else.
Well, you got to say it's a carve out for one specific industry. It just is. Again, I say, why the heck do we got franchise laws?
Right.
Why do we need to have a license? I mean, I understand the standard, normal, general business license to set up shop in Mississippi, which is mainly to get you registered so you can pay taxes. And for filings, UCC filings, you know the whole deal. So
That's
all
right.
that makes perfect sense. Everybody has to do that to set up shop in all 50 states, as far as I know.
Right.
But then having these special set of laws just to govern franchisees, what the heck is that about?
Well, look, they can contract. They can contract as individuals to do that. We shouldn't do
Well,
that
sure.
for them.
Totally agree.
Right.
I agree. We got Senator Jeremy England in the Element Well studios. You can hang around with us today. No
Certainly.
session today.
That's right.
Appreciate it. We're coming to actions by President Ronald Reagan when he was elected. I don't know if you guys remember this. He increased the speed limit. He returned it to 70 from 55. It was Carter that pushed it down to 55.
That song was actually written.
That's right.
He came back, Sammy Hagar came back to the United States from a European tour and was driving down the road in his Ferrari or whatever it was and was going, however many miles it was. and got a speeding ticket. And he says, what? He goes, yeah, the speed limit's now 55 everywhere.
It was miserable. And you know what the purpose was?
Save gas?
Yeah, because we were running out of oil in 1976. Oh, any minute we'll be out. Won't be able to
Don't produce
gas
more, just limit.
It was so there are actual studies, economic studies, that show that the speed at which goods can be transported to their place of sale, to the ultimate consumer, that the faster we can do that, the greater is GDP production, productivity, et cetera. I mean, that makes sense, does it not? The faster you can get those goods around. So just think about if we shipped everything on 20-mile-an-hour rail, how miserable that would be.
Yeah.
And how much that would impede economic activity. So Amazon, as an example, figured out, if we can get a lot of this stuff under one roof close to the end-user consumer, I bet we can make a market out of that, a business out of that. They've done it.
It's like that scene at Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, when they go into the general store trying to order stuff, and he goes, it's 2 weeks, I have to order it, it's 2 weeks. He goes, everything's 2 weeks. Why does everything take 2 weeks?
Senator Jeremy England, our guest in the Element Well studios, we were just talking about HB 401. So I'm in the camp of I'm not sure whether or not a manufacturer could be granted a license to sell a new vehicle in Mississippi directly to a consumer in Mississippi. I'm not sure if that's possible or not at this point. Senator Sparks says they can. I sure would like to see, and this is a question, I guess I'd phrase it in the form of a question for you, Senator. Is it possible for the legislature to seek an opinion from the Attorney General on a bill before it's been enacted?
I assume we could. Now, we have peer committee that we can go ask questions to, and they'll look at all of that, and I imagine they will go speak with the Attorney General. But this Attorney General opinion, what was interesting about that they came back and said what Tesla did here in Jackson, which was open up a wholly owned subsidiary company, Tesla Mississippi LLC, I believe. I'm not sure. That's right. Exactly. But the question was sent from the Automobile Association to say, hey, is this something they can do? And the Attorney General's opinion was that we don't see anything that they've done that's out that is against the law in Mississippi. Present law. So this idea that they're not following current rules, the Attorney General disagrees with that. And look, there wasn't a lawsuit filed. If they broke the law, we would have seen court action. Well, we didn't see that. We saw legislation introduced to try to prevent them from doing that. And that's what bothers me about it. And the other thing that I wanted to make the point of, let's assume you can buy online. Okay. Well, Tesla may not want to do that. They might want to come put dealerships in some places in Mississippi. Well, this is the same thing as us telling, say you had Bob's Video on your corner of your neighborhood, and we wanted to protect Bob's Video, and we told Netflix, hey, Netflix, we love the idea of you showing movies in Mississippi. You just can't do it online. You can come down here and open a store, or open come use Bob's to sell your videos, but don't be, we don't want the consumers of Mississippi to be able to do that. And that's silly. And this legislation is silly for the same reason. The examples are endless of similar situations. Walmart operates corporate-owned stores. The largest employer in the state of Mississippi, by the way, is Walmart. And no doubt it had a negative impact on local so-called mom-and-pop owned stores. It did. Right. But you've got to provide some value to the market. If you're providing a value that attracts customers away from Walmart and into your store, then you're going to be fine. But if your value is, well, the government's protecting me, which is what's happening here, in my view, with the auto industry, well, that's not value. That's just being protected. A small group in a small industry, not a small industry, but a small industry relative to the entire state's GDP. Mm-hmm. So when you look in that at it from that perspective, what's next? Who's next? Or you made an example with Netflix. Right. I mean, the digital economy is here to stay, and it's growing dramatically, and we all have access to virtually every product, service known to man in the palm of our hand. That's right. And look, Senator Fillingame made an excellent point yesterday. He said we shouldn't look at it as a badge of honor to be the last and everything. And it just feels like we're propping up a industry or a model, a sales model that's just fading.
Right.
And we're propping it up, and we're gonna leave it there as long as possible. And look, I tried to introduce a repealer on this, a sunset provision on this law yesterday for 2 years, so we can come back and look. We can look at this and say, look, if Alabama and Louisiana and these other states are opening up, we're going to need to do that pretty quickly too, or we're going to get left behind.
No doubt.
And I couldn't pass that yesterday, and I really think what we saw happen in the chamber yesterday was a lot of my colleagues that were looking at their individual district and looking at their relationships with their individual automobile dealers and how they interact with their community, and not looking at statewide policy, because policy-wise, this just was not a good decision.
Yeah, what about the consumers in the state of Mississippi and the citizens of the state of Mississippi? And it's no disrespect to the auto dealers. I have friends that are in that business. They're great people. They operate great businesses.
That's right.
And I believe they'll continue to thrive and flourish, honestly. And I personally prefer to do business with an auto dealer. I'm not at the point where I'm comfortable doing such a transaction just through online systems. But that's just me. But I don't want to prevent those transactions from occurring,
right.
And these new routes to market being introduced. We're just getting started. What are you going to do? You could be in session year-round to just deal with all these situations.
That's right. Well, and Gerard, if you drive through Pensacola, who has a Tesla dealership in Pensacola, you know what else you see on the interstate?
What?
All of these other auto dealers.
Well, sure you do.
They're still there.
That's how people buy.
That's right. It's not, we're saying that we're worried about them going away, or that we're worried about their model being harmed, but it's coexisting in other states.
Well, even if we are, it's not the government's role to stand in the way of that. The market figures that out. This is a government saying we can't let them go out of business because maybe there's a different route to market that consumers prefer. We're telling consumers, I don't care if you prefer it or not, you can't buy it that way in Mississippi. That's nuts.
That's correct. And look, I'm so glad we have cell phones in our state, and we didn't prop up the landline telephones or the telegraphs way back when. I'm so glad we didn't do that there. And again, I know I'm being silly, but that's my opinion of what we're doing here with this legislation.
Well, think about the routes to market of a cell phone.
Right.
Directly from the manufacturer, directly from a manufacturer-owned store, from the telecom carrier, from retailers. They're multiple.
That's right.
That's a good thing. That's better for consumers. That breeds innovation, efficiency, agility, competition. I thought we supported all that stuff here in Mississippi. What am I missing here?
I think, again, I think and I hope we do. I just don't know that. Look, we're in an election year, and I think this bill just hit at a hard time, and was a hard decision for some folks in our chamber to make. And look, the House passed it to us early. They shot on over to the Senate, and we had some good, lively debate on it yesterday, but of course we voted for the House language and sent it straight to the governor's desk, and we'll see what Governor Tate Reeves does with that. So here we are.
Look, I want everybody to thrive, but I want consumers to have choice. If this were the sale of an illegal product or a product that needed to be tightly regulated, such as drugs, for example, that's a different matter in my view. But when you're talking about motor vehicles, they've been around 100 years. I mean, of course, they've evolved through the years, and they will continue to evolve. I just don't think it makes sense for the government to intervene in this respect. This is what Democrats do. This is what Joe Biden does. I was also surprised to see, as you're aware, Senator, that there were a number of Democrats that also voted nay here.
They did. Look, Senator Hilton Fraser.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Senator Hilton Fraser sits right behind me. Great guy.
Yeah.
Democrat.
Yeah.
Told me, he said, "Look, I'm voting policy here." He said,
Great.
and this is the right policy, and so I appreciated his support on that, and his nay vote.
Yeah, he and some others. We'll get to that.
Right.
If you can stick around, we got some other stuff to talk about.
We can do that.
Senator Jeremy England is our guest in the Element Wealth Studios. We're coming real mad because they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
The Speedwagon.
Dang.
Which is named after a
car.
A car.
From Champaign, Illinois, Kevin Cronin.
Champaign, Illinois, really?
Right. They started out playing gigs at the university there, Champaign, Illinois,
Yep.
REO Speedwagon.
Carolina.
Yeah, founded by the drummer the band. Alan, I can't remember his last name. He founded the band REO Speedwagon. Look it up. Of course, Kevin Cronin, the lead singer there, and the lead guitarist who passed away a few years ago, Gary Richcraft. All kinds of crazy trivia that's worthless, right? But well, it's my era, you know.
I do appreciate the theme, but I'm more of a country guy. So
okay.
Joe Diffie is something women like about a pickup man might be more.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
might be more appropriate.
We love Joe Diffie.
That's right.
All right, Senator Jeremy England, our guest in the Element Well studio. So I'll just kind of wrap up the discussion about this EV legislation. And honestly, it's really not even EVs. Right, it applies to all new vehicles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It I think is being commonly referred to as the Tesla bill and as affecting EV sales, but I think that's just based on this assumption that we're transitioning to electric vehicles.
Yeah, no. The reason EVs are brought up in this is they're the ones that had this new innovative way of
the route to market,
getting their product to consumers. So. Yeah, this bill, you know, if this bill didn't pass, we were no way in Mississippi favoring EVs over gas vehicles or anything like that. And I know that kind of got caught up in the mix in politics as it does sometimes. But this was all about policy in the free market.
Yeah, you're right. So appreciate that and appreciate your vote, honestly, in that regard. You were one of 14 in the Senate who voted against this legislation. And we just talked about there being 5 Democrats, including Senator Hillman Frazier, that sits behind you in the Senate, also voted against it. All right, let's talk about some of the other stuff going on in the state with this being a pivotal week in the legislature as well. Lots of bills got killed in committees this week, or this last couple of weeks, really. A little surprising, I think, that not so many went to the floor. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, we had every year we end up with like 4,000 at the beginning when we get all the bills dropped, and that gets cut immediately almost to about 400 after each chamber cuts down their bills through committees. Now, what we've got this time is we're dealing with House bills, and the House is dealing with our Senate bills. Right. But there's still some that don't make it out of committee even on that, and that's where sometimes it can be surprising. You know, folks work so hard to get it through one chamber, and then the other chamber they hit a stop sign, and their bill gets tossed in the trash until next year.
The ballot initiative bill, the bill that would essentially restore that, allowing the citizens to place a measure on the ballot for a statewide vote. Of course, you know, the House had a bill last year, didn't make it through the Senate. It pretty much kept the signature threshold aligned with prior law that we had. I think 12% of those who voted in the last gubernatorial election. But it also allowed the citizens to create or amend statute as opposed to amending the Constitution. It wouldn't allow that, which is what our old law did. All right, so in the Senate, we get a bill. I believe Senator Tyler McConn, is he the main author of this particular measure?
His bill, I think, was the vehicle that we moved forward. We had several, but yeah, Senator McConn's bill ended up being the vehicle for the citizen-driven initiative process.
Okay, and that requires a higher signature threshold, 12% of the registered voters, which would more than double the number required to qualify a measure for the ballot. How did you vote on that? Where do you think that's going to happen on that deal?
So in the Senate, I voted to keep the vehicle alive, which meant we sent a bill to the House that could have been amended. If it made it through committee, we could have it in conference. We could still be working on it, negotiating. Now, I understand now it didn't make it out of committee, so we don't have that now this year. But that's a process that deserves our attention. And it deserves maybe the couple of years we're giving it to work itself out, because what we were going to see, Gerard, and what bothered me in these other states that had this process, that after the Dobbs case, they came in and had a citizen-driven initiative to make abortion legal in these states again, and you can drive public sentiment with enough money and with enough ads and with enough talking points, and that's kind of what they could have done here. And I just don't want to see that happen here in Mississippi.
So I think the Speaker of the House says that he would be in favor of prohibiting that topic from being available to the citizens to place on the ballot.
Right.
Yeah. So it's restricting the topic, the subject matter is essentially what it would do.
That's right. And I think we'll end up with it. We need it.
Okay.
We need it, and I think we'll end up with it. It's just not going to be this year,
Gotcha.
unfortunately.
Senator Jeremy England has been our guest in the Element Wealth Studios. Appreciate you coming in there, Senator. Thank
Absolutely,
you.
Gerard.